In a single, impulsive moment, a call is made that shatters the calm of an ordinary day, setting in motion a chain of events that will forever alter lives, challenge long-held prejudices, and force a community to confront its deepest wounds. In the quiet pre-dawn hours of Eastbridge, the city was just beginning to stir. The chill in the air was a gentle reminder of winter's grip, while the promise of a new day kindled hope in the hearts of its citizens. At the center of the city stood Greenway Grocery, a modest store that had served the community for decades. Its windows glowed warmly even as the streets lay empty, and inside, shelves were stocked and aisles polished in readiness for the morning rush. Marina Ellis, the store's manager, prided herself on keeping the establishment in impeccable order. Known for her strict adherence to policies and an unwavering commitment to discipline, Marina had built a reputation for ensuring that Greenway Grocery was a place where order reigned. Yet beneath her controlled exterior lay unresolved tensions, years of grappling with personal insecurities, professional pressure, and the heavy expectations that came from being the daughter of a respected public figure. Her father, Thomas Ellis, was not just any man. He was the mayor of Eastbridge, a position that had earned him both admiration and scrutiny in equal measure. On this particular morning, Marina's mind was a maelstrom of thoughts. She had woken with a heaviness that she couldn't shake off. Perhaps it was the weight of her father's legacy, or maybe the long hours at the store had taken their toll. As she methodically prepared the front of the store for the coming day, she couldn't help but reflect on her own vulnerability, a vulnerability that would soon be put to a harsh test. Marina's thoughts were interrupted by the gentle hum of the door chime. A young black teenager, Darius, entered the store with an air of cautious confidence. He wore baggy jeans and a faded hoodie, his eyes scanning the shelves as if he were searching for something familiar in the unfamiliar environment. For Marina, whose inner world was dominated by rigid rules and a narrow interpretation of what constituted proper behavior, Darius's presence stirred a cocktail of assumptions and suspicions. At that moment, neither of them could foresee that the decisions made within these walls on this day would reverberate far beyond the confines of the store. As the city began to wake and the day unfolded, the stage was set for a confrontation that would expose hidden biases, test familial bonds, and challenge the very core of what it meant to serve a community in crisis. The soft murmur of customers was yet to fill the aisles when Marina noticed Darius linger near the snack section. The teenager's hesitant, almost furtive glances around the store immediately triggered something deep within her, a memory of a time when she too had felt alien in her own skin, before she was swept into the world of adult responsibilities. However, that moment of empathy was quickly overtaken by ingrained prejudice, a habit nurtured over years in an environment where fear of the other was both taught and rewarded. Marina recalled the countless warnings from her mentors about maintaining order, about ensuring that every customer behaved according to the unspoken rules of civility. In her mind, the sight of a black teen in a predominantly white, middle-class neighborhood carried an unwarranted sense of danger. As she walked over, her steps echoed the authority she believed she wielded. With measured steps, she approached Darius and asked sharply, "Can I help you find something?" Darius paused, startled by the tone in her voice. His eyes, wide and apprehensive, darted between the neatly arranged aisles and the stern face of Marina. I'm just looking," he stuttered, his voice low and unsure. In that fleeting moment, the store seemed to hold its breath. Other customers, though few in number, sensed the rising tension and watched silently, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Marina's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and conviction. She recalled the stories of shoplifting and vandalism that had been whispered about in hushed tones. The rational part of her mind urged caution, while another part, one hardened by years of policing behavior, insisted that this young man might be testing the boundaries of acceptable conduct. Without pausing for a second thought, Marina's hand moved to the store's security phone. Her decision, driven more by instinct and prejudice than by any real evidence, was set in motion. In that moment, the line between protecting the store and persecuting an innocent soul blurred dangerously. The call she made would soon spiral into a crisis, one that would force her to confront the very foundations of her beliefs. Meanwhile, Darius stood frozen, the simple act of shopping transforming into an ordeal that he never asked for, a reminder that appearances could trigger life-altering consequences. Marina's fingers trembled as she dialed the number for the local police. The connection crackled to life, and she issued her report in clipped, formal language. There's a disturbance in the store. A young man is loitering in an area he doesn't belong. I request immediate assistance, she stated. There was no pause for explanation, no opportunity for Darius to explain himself. In her mind, she was merely upholding the law, protecting her store and, by extension, the reputation of the community. The voice on the other end of the line was calm and measured, acknowledging her report and promising dispatch. Within minutes, the sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, growing louder as they approached the store. The atmosphere inside Greenway Grocery shifted palpably, from an everyday routine to a scene charged with escalating tension. Customers exchanged uneasy glances, and even the store's background music seemed to falter in its gentle tune. Darius's heart sank as he realized what was happening. Every moment of his innocent presence in the store was now under the harsh scrutiny of law enforcement. His hands trembled as he clutched his backpack, the contents of which were now irrelevant in the face of the unfolding drama. His eyes, once filled with cautious curiosity, now shone with a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. In his mind, he replayed the brief encounter with Marina, unable to fathom how a simple trip to buy a snack had turned into a spectacle of unwarranted suspicion. As the door swung open to admit two police officers, the scene took on an even more surreal quality. The officers' expressions were neutral, their voices professional as they assessed the situation. Darius attempted to explain himself, his voice quavering, but his words were drowned out by the echoing footsteps of authority. In that charged moment, Marina watched, conflicted. A flicker of regret passed through her eyes. A small, unbidden realization that the decision she'd made might have been rash, influenced by nothing more than unfounded assumptions. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder as minutes turned into what felt like an eternity. In a city built on the promise of fairness and opportunity, the encounter at Greenway Grocery was rapidly becoming a stark illustration of the very divisions that threatened to tear the community apart. Little did Marina know that the arrival of an even greater figure, her own father, would soon upend everything she had believed in. As the police began their routine questioning, the sound of a sleek car engine pulled up outside the store. Marina's heart skipped a beat. She recognized the vehicle immediately, a symbol of power and authority. It was the mayor's car. The news of his arrival spread like wildfire among the store's patrons and staff. Whispers of astonishment mingled with the palpable tension that filled the air. Thomas Ellis, the mayor of Eastbridge, stepped out of the car with the confident stride of a man accustomed to command. His eyes, sharp and discerning, quickly took in the scene before him. The officers standing firm, the distressed teenager at the center of it all, and his daughter, Marina, who now appeared torn between her role as a manager and the unsettling knowledge of her error. The mayor's presence was a reminder of the legacy and responsibility that came with his position, a legacy that extended to every corner of the community, including the small, bustling aisles of Greenway Grocery. For Marina, the arrival of her father was both a moment of personal humiliation and a harsh reckoning. The cool confidence that she had once taken pride in now gave way to a gnawing regret. How could she have allowed her prejudices to dictate her actions so carelessly? Every instinct that had once guided her in the name of order now seemed misguided, tainted by an unfair bias that she could no longer ignore. Thomas, ever the observant politician, quickly assessed the situation. While he maintained a composed exterior, the lines of worry on his face betrayed a deeper concern. He knew that this incident was not merely about a disturbance in a grocery store. It was emblematic of the larger societal issues that had long plagued his administration. In a community where the ideals of justice and equality were constantly under strain, even a single act of misguided authority could spark a broader debate, one that might ultimately reflect on his legacy. As he approached Marina, his voice was firm yet gentle. "Marina, what is happening here?" he asked, his tone conveying both disappointment and a need for answers. Marina, caught between the roles of a dutiful daughter and an overzealous manager, struggled to find her voice. In that instant, She realized that the choices she had made could have far-reaching consequences, not just for herself, but for the entire community she was meant to serve. The officers continued their work, unaware of the personal drama unfolding in the background. Darius, still shaking, watched as the mayor's stern gaze shifted between him and Marina. In that silent exchange, he sensed that the balance of power was shifting. The incident that had started with a single call was now evolving into a matter of public record, one that could redefine the relationships between law enforcement, local leadership, and the everyday citizens of Eastbridge. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch. With the mayor now at the scene, whispers of scandal and political missteps began to echo beyond the walls of Greenway Grocery. Marina felt the heavy burden of her misstep as she tried to explain her actions. I thought he was causing trouble, she stammered, her eyes pleading for understanding. But her words only deepened the chasm between her intentions and their consequences. Thomas Ellis's expression was somber as he regarded his daughter. Intentions are important, Marina, but so are actions, he said quietly. His voice was measured, yet each word carried the weight of authority and the wisdom of years spent navigating the delicate balance of public opinion and private duty. He knew that if the truth behind this incident was to be unearthed, it would not be enough to simply claim ignorance or error. The community would demand accountability. The police officers, maintaining their professional distance, began to interview witnesses and document the sequence of events. Their presence underscored the gravity of the situation. Darius, meanwhile, was left in a state of utter confusion and hurt. He had never intended to be a part of any conflict. In his eyes, he was merely an ordinary teenager who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yet, the incident had rapidly spiraled into something much larger, a symbol of societal tensions that had long simmered beneath the surface. As word spread throughout the store, other patrons began to speak in hushed tones about the incident. Some expressed sympathy for Darius, while others questioned Marina's judgment. The air was thick with a mix of discontent, fear, and the uneasy realization that a single moment of rash action could shatter the fragile peace of a community. The ripple effect was already being felt far beyond the aisles of the grocery store. Thomas Ellis turned to the officers and asked them to provide a preliminary report of what had transpired. The mayor's request was not just for clarity. It was a call for transparency, a signal that every citizen of Eastbridge deserved to know the truth behind the unfolding drama. As he listened intently to the officer's account, Thomas's mind raced with thoughts of public policy, social justice, and the ever-present challenge of reconciling personal prejudices with the demands of leadership. In that charged atmosphere, Marina felt the sting of regret deep in her heart. The realization that her own biases had set into motion events that now imperiled the trust between citizens and their leaders was a lesson she would not soon forget. Every second that ticked by seemed to hammer home the cost of a mistake made in haste, a mistake that would soon demand reckoning in both the public and private spheres. As the investigation at Greenway Grocery unfolded, the relationship between Marina and her father became increasingly strained. Thomas Ellis, accustomed to commanding respect and admiration as the mayor, now found himself confronting the raw, unfiltered consequences of a personal failure. He had always believed that his daughter possessed the strength and judgment necessary to uphold the ideals of the community. Yet, in that critical moment, her actions had called into question the values they both held dear. Marina retreated into a storm of introspection as the day progressed. In the solitude of her office, she replayed the events in her mind over and over, questioning every decision that had led her to that fateful call. The sound of the phone ringing, a reminder of the irreversible choice she had made, haunted her every thought. Each ring echoed like a verdict, a reminder that the consequences of her actions would be far-reaching and long-lasting. Outside the store, the city of Eastbridge was abuzz with rumors and conflicting narratives. Local news outlets had caught wind of the incident, and soon the story was being dissected from every angle. Headlines questioned Marina's motives, while others speculated about the broader implications for a city struggling with issues of race and justice. The media frenzy added an extra layer of pressure on the Ellis family, whose personal lives were now inextricably linked with the political fate of Eastbridge. Thomas's own heart was heavy with disappointment, not only in his daughter, but in himself. As the mayor, He had long promised to be a beacon of fairness and progress. Now, as he looked into Marina's tearful eyes, he saw the embodiment of all his fears, a daughter caught in the snare of prejudice and rash judgment. In that moment, he vowed that this incident would not only be a lesson for Marina, but also a catalyst for change throughout the community. He began to consider new initiatives, community outreach programs, and forums where citizens could confront their biases head-on. In a private conversation later that evening, father and daughter spoke for the first time since the incident. The words were tentative at first, laden with regret and sorrow. "Dad, I'm so sorry," Marina whispered, her voice breaking. "I let my fear control me, and I hurt someone I never intended to hurt." Thomas listened intently, the pain in his eyes tempered by the resolve to use this moment for growth. "We all make mistakes, Marina," he replied slowly. "But what we do afterward, how we learn from them, defines who we are." Their conversation was a turning point. For Marina, it was a moment of awakening, a painful but necessary reckoning with the prejudices that had been deeply embedded in her psyche. For Thomas, it was a reminder of the fragility of trust and the importance of leading by example, both in public office and within the sanctity of family. The incident at Greenway Grocery was not just a story to be told in hushed tones or dissected in media reports. It was a personal tragedy that demanded healing, understanding, and a commitment to change. In the days that followed, the incident became a lightning rod for debate throughout Eastbridge. Public forums, community meetings, and even school assemblies were abuzz with discussions about accountability, bias, and the role of authority in everyday life. Marina found herself at the center of a maelstrom of criticism and support. Some people condemned her for her hasty actions, arguing that her call to the police had set a dangerous precedent of racial profiling. Others sympathized with her, acknowledging the pressures of maintaining order in a rapidly changing society. Everywhere she went, Marina was met with stares, whispered comments, and the occasional outright confrontation. The once familiar corridors of Greenway Grocery now felt like a stage where she was perpetually on display. It wasn't long before local newspapers published in-depth profiles of the incident, scrutinizing her every decision and questioning whether her actions reflected a broader societal malaise. The store, once a haven of routine and familiarity, had now become a microcosm of the community's divisions. For Thomas Ellis, the public scrutiny was a heavy burden to bear as well. As mayor, he had always prided himself on being a progressive force for change. Yet, the personal nature of the incident, his daughter's misjudgment, threatened to undermine years of careful political work. In numerous interviews, Thomas stressed the importance of accountability and the need to confront prejudice wherever it arose. He acknowledged that while his daughter's actions were inexcusable, they were symptomatic of a larger problem that required community-wide introspection. Despite the pressure, Thomas resolved to address the controversy head-on. He organized a town hall meeting, inviting citizens from every corner of Eastbridge to come together and discuss the issues of racial bias and the proper use of authority. The meeting was set to be a landmark event, a moment when personal accountability and public policy would intersect in an attempt to heal old wounds and forge a path forward. In preparing for that meeting, Thomas hoped to demonstrate that true leadership was not about avoiding difficult conversations, but about confronting them with honesty, humility, and a willingness to learn. For Marina, the public outcry became a crucible in which she was forced to confront the consequences of her actions. The community's reaction was a constant reminder that personal decisions could have far-reaching implications. Her journey from denial to acceptance of responsibility was fraught with internal conflict, yet it was also an opportunity to redefine herself. As the days turned into weeks, Marina began to quietly participate in community events, speaking with local leaders and activists about her experiences and the lessons she had learned. In these encounters, she discovered that vulnerability and remorse, when shared openly, could be the first steps toward meaningful change. While the adults of Eastbridge were locked in their debates and self-reflection, Darius's life had been irrevocably altered by that fateful day. For him, the incident was not just a misfortune, it was a profound injustice that challenged his sense of self-worth and belonging. In the weeks following the event, he grappled with a tumult of emotions. Anger, hurt, confusion, and a deep-seated betrayal by a society that seemed to value appearances over understanding. Darius's perspective was shaped by experiences that few of his peers could fathom. Raised in a neighborhood where he had learned to navigate adversity on a daily basis, he had long been aware of the prejudices that lurked beneath the surface of polite society. However, he had never imagined that such biases would manifest so blatantly in a place that was supposed to be safe, a local grocery store. The memory of that day haunted him. The cold stares, the whispered comments, and most of all, the feeling of being unjustly targeted by a figure of authority. Determined to reclaim his narrative, Darius began speaking out about his experience. In interviews with local media and at community events, he recounted his side of the story with quiet dignity and unwavering honesty. "I just wanted to buy a snack," he said in one interview, his voice steady despite the lingering pain. "I never asked for trouble. I only wanted to be treated like any other customer." His words resonated with many in the community, those who recognized in his story the echoes of a broader struggle for fairness and equality. Darius's newfound role as a reluctant spokesperson for change was not without its challenges. He faced backlash from some quarters, accusations of exaggeration, even manipulation. Yet, the support from many community members, especially young people who had grown weary of systemic bias, was overwhelming. Local activists and organizations rallied behind him, using his story as a catalyst for discussions on racial profiling, justice reform, and the need for empathy in everyday interactions. As Darius navigated this new chapter of his life, he also began to heal. He attended counseling sessions and community support groups, where he met others who had faced similar injustices. Gradually, his pain transformed into a quiet determination, a resolve to ensure that no other young person would have to endure what he had. His story became one of resilience, a beacon of hope that even in the face of injustice, a voice could rise to challenge the status quo and bring about meaningful change. The town hall meeting organized by Mayor Thomas Ellis became a pivotal moment for Eastbridge. The city hall was packed to capacity with citizens from all walks of life, residents who had come to share their stories, activists demanding accountability, and curious onlookers seeking to understand the complexities of the incident at Greenway Grocery. The atmosphere was electric, charged with a mix of anticipation and cautious optimism that dialogue could bring about resolution. Thomas Ellis opened the meeting with a heartfelt address. He acknowledged the gravity of the incident and the broader societal issues it revealed. "Today, we are not here to assign blame solely to one person," he declared, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "We are here to understand how fear, bias, and a lack of empathy can fracture our community. And we are here to learn from our mistakes so that we may build a better, more inclusive future." The meeting was structured as an open forum, inviting voices from every side. Community leaders, local activists, and even ordinary citizens stepped forward to share their perspectives. For many, the incident was not an isolated case. It was a symptom of a deeper malaise that had plagued Eastbridge for years. Stories of subtle discrimination, unwarranted suspicion, and the quiet pain of being misunderstood came pouring out. The dialogue was raw, honest, and sometimes painful, as participants recounted personal experiences of being marginalized or judged based on appearances. Marina, still reeling from the consequences of her actions, listened from the back of the room. Her presence was met with mixed emotions. Some saw her as a cautionary example of unchecked bias, while others recognized in her a person who was struggling to find her way. In that moment, she understood that the path to redemption was not simply a matter of apologizing. It required deep introspection, tangible change, and a commitment to healing the wounds that had been inflicted. As the meeting drew to a close, the tone had shifted from one of anger and division to one of cautious hope. Plans were set in motion for community outreach programs, sensitivity training for public officials, and initiatives to bridge the gap between different segments of the population. The dialogue had laid bare the issues, and now, the responsibility rested on everyone to act. For Thomas Ellis, the meeting reaffirmed his belief that true leadership meant listening to the people, even when their words cut deep, and working tirelessly to ensure that every citizen felt seen and heard. In the aftermath of the town hall meeting, Marina embarked on a personal journey of redemption. Realizing that her actions had not only hurt Darius, but had also undermined the trust of the entire community, she dedicated herself to making amends. She sought counseling and participated in diversity and inclusion workshops, striving to understand the roots of her biases and how to dismantle them. Every session, every conversation, was a step toward rebuilding her identity as someone who was not defined by fear, but by compassion. Marina began reaching out to community leaders and local activists, offering her sincere apologies and a promise to do better. One particularly poignant moment came when she met with Darius in a quiet park near the store. Under the canopy of ancient oak trees, she expressed her remorse, her voice trembling with genuine regret. "I was wrong, Darius," she said softly. "I let my assumptions control my actions, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Darius, though understandably wounded, recognized the sincerity in her words. Their conversation was tentative at first, marked by cautious hope and the acknowledgement that healing was a process, a long and uncertain process, but one that was now set in motion. News of Marina's efforts began to spread, and gradually, the community's initial anger softened into a willingness to forgive. The transformation was neither immediate nor complete, but it was significant. Marina's journey became a testament to the possibility of change, that even those who have strayed from the path of empathy could find their way back through introspection and genuine effort. At the same time, Mayor Thomas Ellis continued to lead with a steadfast commitment to justice and reform. He partnered with local organizations to launch initiatives aimed at eradicating racial bias in everyday interactions. His office began hosting regular community dialogues, inviting residents to share their experiences and work together to forge a future based on mutual respect. For him, the incident at Greenway Grocery had been a painful reminder that leadership was not immune to personal failings, but it was also an opportunity to set a positive example of accountability and transformation. As weeks turned into months, the wounds inflicted by that fateful day began to show signs of healing. The once contentious debates gave way to more constructive discussions about what it meant to live in a community where everyone was valued equally. Marina continued to work behind the scenes at Greenway Grocery, now not only as a manager, but as an advocate for change. She organized staff training sessions that emphasized cultural sensitivity and conflict resolution. Her efforts resonated with her team, many of whom had been unsettled by the previous incident and were eager to learn how to serve every customer with dignity and respect. Thomas Ellis, buoyed by the gradual transformation in the public discourse, introduced new community outreach programs. One such initiative was a series of workshops titled Voices of Eastbridge, which provided a platform for citizens to share personal stories of discrimination, resilience, and hope. The workshops were widely attended, and over time, they became a cornerstone of the city's efforts to bridge divides. In his opening remarks at the inaugural session, the mayor spoke of accountability and growth, stressing that every mistake was an opportunity for collective learning. Darius, now emerging as a young leader in his own right, began using his experience to mentor other teenagers in his neighborhood. He organized discussion groups and community service projects aimed at fostering unity and mutual understanding. His journey from victim to advocate was inspiring, and his willingness to speak publicly about the incident helped to reshape public perceptions about the issues of racial profiling and justice. The progress was not without its setbacks. There were still moments when old prejudices resurfaced, when a well-intentioned comment was misinterpreted, or when the scars of the past momentarily darkened the light of hope. Yet, each setback served as a reminder of the work that still lay ahead. For Marina, every day was a chance to prove that she had learned from her mistake and was committed to living a life of compassion. For Thomas, each community event was an affirmation that leadership was a continuous journey, a journey of listening, learning, and evolving. In the cool evening light of early spring, Eastbridge found itself on the cusp of a new era. The scars left by the incident at Greenway Grocery were slowly fading, replaced by cautious optimism and a collective commitment to rebuild trust. Marina, now a changed woman, often reflected on that dark day as both a painful memory and a catalyst for personal growth. In her quiet moments, she would write in her journal, pages filled with remorse, insights, and plans for how to ensure that such a mistake would never be repeated. At the local community center, A memorial event was organized to honor the resilience of those who had suffered injustice and to celebrate the progress that had been made. Darius was invited to speak, and his address was heartfelt and resolute. "We all have the power to change," he said. "Sometimes it starts with a mistake, a moment when we falter. But if we choose to learn, to listen, and to act with empathy, we can transform even the darkest moments into opportunities for growth." The event was attended by people from every corner of Eastbridge. There were tears, applause, and a renewed sense of solidarity. For many, it was a moment of catharsis, a collective breath of relief as the community came together to acknowledge past wrongs and commit to a more inclusive future. Thomas Ellis, standing at the podium, shared his own reflections on the journey. "This experience has been a lesson for all of us," he said. "It has taught us that no one is above accountability and that every mistake, when met with honesty and a willingness to change, can be the spark that ignites true progress." His words resonated deeply, echoing the sentiments of a community ready to move forward, united by a shared understanding of the importance of compassion and justice. In the days that followed the event, Marina continued her work at the store, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She implemented new policies that emphasized empathy over suspicion and worked closely with community leaders to ensure that every customer, regardless of background, felt welcome and valued. Her transformation was not instantaneous, nor was it complete, but it was genuine, a commitment born from the painful recognition of her own fallibility and the desire to do better. The story that began with a rash decision in a humble grocery store had evolved into a transformative journey for an entire community. What might have remained a bitter episode of racial profiling became, instead, a turning point, a moment when Eastbridge was forced to confront its prejudices, acknowledge its mistakes, and work collectively toward a more just future. Marina Ellis emerged as a symbol of the possibility of redemption. Her journey from a manager ruled by fear and bias to a person determined to embrace empathy and accountability was a testament to the power of self-reflection and change. While the scars of that fateful day would never fully disappear, they served as constant reminders of the need for vigilance in the face of prejudice. For Thomas Ellis, the experience reinforced that true leadership meant not only making difficult decisions, but also standing by one's community in its moments of reckoning. His commitment to fostering open dialogue and understanding helped lay the groundwork for a future where every citizen of Eastbridge could feel seen, heard, and valued. Darius, whose life had been upended by an act of unfounded suspicion, grew into a courageous advocate for justice. His resilience and willingness to share his story inspired countless others, proving that even in the face of injustice, hope and progress were possible. In the end, the events that transpired at Greenway Grocery, though painful and divisive at the time, ultimately sparked a reimagining of what it meant to be a community. It taught everyone involved that while mistakes might be inevitable, it was the response to those mistakes, the courage to acknowledge them and the determination to learn from them, that truly defined the spirit of a society. As Eastbridge moved forward, the legacy of that day served as both a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope, a reminder that in every moment of darkness, there lay an opportunity to cast a light of understanding and change. And in that light, the promise of a more compassionate future shone ever brighter. I appreciate you watching until the very end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Your support means the world and helps bring more powerful stories to life. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you, and see you in the next one.